Okay, welcome all, as always. Look forward to this one time a month. I wish there was more, but we can't. So, tech solutions for your New Year's resolutions. This is going to be a fantastic episode, probably one of the more highly rated ones. So, we are, as always, generously brought to you by the Triumphant from Boeing, Jepson, ForeFlight, and Boeing. So, we thank them for helping us get through this on a monthly basis. So house clean, of course, on the right side, you will see the, I guess you could call that a control panel. And that's how you can ask your questions. It is non-verbal, so if you have a question, just put it in there. And depending on, sometimes you have a question later based on a previous topic, we'll do that in Q&A. But if it pertains to what we're specifically talking about or just talk about, we'll go ahead and ask it. And or just answer you immediately through there. So be aware of that. And then let's do some intros. Oh, and by the way, on the question and answer, by the way, just be aware that we will go about, call it 55 minutes. We'll finish up the actual webinar, and then we will go with Q&A. So if for some reason you get an answer on your question that says we'll cover that in Q&A, that's what that means. And generally, we never, for everyone's safety, sanity, and otherwise, we don't go more than a half hour. So if we have some questions left over, we apologize, but we try to get as many as we can. And as our friend Paul has asked, I will get to that answer in a moment. You'll never guess what he said, don't forget.
It's coming, don't worry.
It's coming. So, okay, I am Pablo Morelia, Senior Director of Flight Training Technology and pusher of all things AFTA, or the AOPA Flight Training Advantage, which, as the slide says, is a must-have for every student pilot. Overall tech guy, pilot, animal lover, hockey player, you name it. So, Chris?
I'm trying to click, there it goes. So I'm Chris Moser, and I work here at AOPA as well. I am a CFI teacher for a long time, and I like to play music, ski, and ride my bike. And you can see there the things that you might want to just pay attention to. If you know any flight schools or CFIs that are interested in learning more about running their business, check out Flight School Connector and our awards program. There it is, right there. Let's go.
I love it.
Stephen.
Yeah, last from the AOPA side of things. Say hello, Stephen.
Why, hello, Stephen.
There's the man behind the fence. Say something, Stephen. Introduce yourself.
Well, I am the Flight Training Initiative Coordinator, so ideally I keep these guys coordinated. It's a full-time job.
Good point. Yeah, it takes two pedals to keep us going.
It does. Yeah, I'm gonna keep right rudder. Definitely keep right rudder on that one.
There it is, right there.
Yeah. Photographer, artist, runner, and I just passed my written exam. Thank you very much.
Pilot. There we go. Yep.
Good. Thank you, Stephen. And lastly, but probably most importantly, why everyone's here is John. John, please say a few words.
Thanks for having me, guys. Glad to be here. I'm John Zimmerman. I work at Sporty's Pilot Shop in Batavia, Ohio there. I've been training and equipping pilots at Sporty's for 60 years plus. I'm a pilot, instrument ground instructor, writer for some different aviation magazines. My two little notes there just to point out that we'll cover a little bit of, do a lot of work with our pilot training team here and the app we do, and also do some work on a website, iPad Pilot News, which has some good help for some of the iPad stuff we'll talk about today. I am not an AOPA guy, but have worked with AOPA for 20 plus years, and I'm thrilled to be here.
So in some sense, you are an AOPA guy.
Yeah, I'm an AOPA member since '94, I think. So there's that.
He's part of the family.
And by the way, he didn't mention it, and it is on the slide, but come on, John, don't downplay. You're the VP catalog division. You're not just a Sporties guy, all right?
He has a catalog in his brain too, which we saw as we were prepping yesterday. It's amazing. So here we go.
All right, so let's get to the reminders.
Hey, this is the highlight of the show right here. Go.
That's fine. So Paul, this is for you. Wings credit for this webinar only if you're here with us right now listening to my voice live, okay? Also, we will be available after, we'll call it in the business post, on YouTube live channel. That's right, we don't have our own channel yet, but we will. Award-winning Tennyson Award. Don't get rusty, we'll have its own channel hopefully, but we are on the AOPA live YouTube channel. Just search for us there under the playlist. Also, we are on the AOPA.org webinar page, and that you can see there's webinars.aopa.org. All right, so let's get to a couple of fun things real quick. February 24th, 21, 11 years ago, Space Shuttle launched on its final mission, STS-133, if you want to look at it, a special moment in everyone's life. And as always, let's begin with a poll. Chris.
Roll that poll, Steven. Roll the poll. Where's the poll? There it goes.
There it is.
All right. It says, so I'm constantly looking for the newest stuff to add to my cockpit. And so what do you think? Is it usually, always? Nope, not me. And I don't have any room left to add anything, which that's never a good answer because I can always find room to shove stuff in the old flight bag. So what do you think there? We'll see what people are coming up with. What do you guys think?
I mean, listen, for me, always flipping through stuff when I get that specifically. I'm not trying to kiss out, put the Sporty's thing in the mail. Always looking through it. Like, what do I need?
How about you, John? Where do you stand? I mean, obviously, you're surrounded by the stuff. Do you find yourself constantly looking for the latest, greatest thing?
Yeah, I do. I don't know if that's because I'm around it or not, but I'm always trying the new thing. If there's a new headset or a flight bag or a watch or whatever it is, a new app, I've got to try it. That's part of the fun of aviation. It's not just about flying; it's about the gear.
Very cool. All right, so let's take a look at the results. Maybe let's see what we got. There we go. So we've got most of the people saying usually. That's pretty reasonable. Only a few saying the always, and then nope, not me, a quarter there. And then I don't have anything room left to add. Well, we will fix that because you can just get a bigger flight bag to fix that problem. I don't have any room left to add. So
and where would I find a new flight bag?
Well, you might be able to find one, for example, at Sporty's Pilot Shop. Brought to you by. All right, let's go ahead and let's cut the poll. And we're back on. There it goes. All right.
There it is.
So what are we covering today? So here what we basically did was we thought let's talk to, and that's why we brought John on. We wanted to find out what is new, what might be some of the latest and greatest things. But the other part we want to talk about today is just stuff that we found useful as well in our own flying and stuff that we found personally useful. So that's what we're going to do. And these are the topics, as you can see, going from tablets in the cockpits and the different tech there to home flight sims, flight bags, comms, headsets, and then just safety and utility. So these are some of the things that really, as we were brainstorming, thought that just jumped out to us as like, this is the cool stuff. So let's get into it. And by the way, stick around to the end for a special bonus from Sporty's Pilot Shop. Special bonus. All right. But you got to stay to the end for that. Okay.
That's right.
So the one more part here was this tablets in the cockpit idea with electronic flight bags, and of course we listed as many as we could think of here. But John, tell us what your thoughts are there, like coming from your perspective at Sporty's. What do you see as like what's really useful about an electronic flight bag?
Yeah, I think somewhere in the last 4 or 5 years, these really transitioned from being nice to have to central parts of the flight bag for most pilots. So we even see it in our flight school here at Sporty's. An iPad app is part of a pilot's life from the beginning. Most pilots these days, their logbook is starting digital. Now, obviously, there's a whole discussion there about the right way to do that in training. We don't send a person off in their first solo cross country with all the tools enabled. But I think it really is a central part for most modern pilots. And all of these apps are amazing. The tools that all of these apps have built in, even at their basic level, really are extraordinary. And what I always encourage pilots to do is dig a little deeper on these. A lot of times you have your favorite feature, you love the radar map, or you love the some weather depiction or whatever it might be. But almost all these apps have tons and tons of features beyond those basics that I think not enough people dig into, whether it's great flight planning tools to help you find a route or get a more wind perfect altitude, or weight and balance tools, or document management, whatever it is. If it's been a while since you really dug a layer deeper on your EFB app, I think it's a great way to unlock some value you're already paying for. And it's something you can do, on your couch. This is not something you have to do in the airplane. So if next time you're sitting around and have 20 minutes, pick up that iPad and dig around and find a new feature in ForeFlight or Garmin Pilot, whatever app you use.
And I know that just recently, I personally happen to be using ForeFlight. I've used Garmin Pilot, which I liked as well. I know that, John, you actually do use them all on a regular basis. But one thing for me is I know that ForeFlight, for example, and I'm sure they all do this, but they'll pop up with an update and they'll tell you this is the new stuff. So check that out. And I'm always amazed. And sometimes I just discover stuff. I know that one of the newest things was I know what it was for instrument stuff to get to the obstacle departure procedures, where it used to be they would just give you the PDF of the whole thing. You had to like page your way through it, and now it just jumps right to the airport that you're picking from.
You know,
So
the other thing too, just to jump on what John said a couple of minutes ago, is it always helps to know it before you get in the cockpit. If you're like, oh, I love my ForeFlight, and you just bought it, and then you go fly, you're going to be,
yes.
Meanwhile, stuff is happening. So, not only just open it up, see what's going on, but just get to know it, even if it's the basics, right? Just if you're going point A to point B direct, get to know how that works and look at it. But you should know how to do it before you get into the cockpit and start fiddling with it.
And that's a great point, Pablo. In fact, that's a good question we should ask is, before we move on, obviously, one thing I wanted to say was just for those that may not be familiar with an electronic flight bag, at its core, it is all your charts, so sectionals, everything else, your TAC, airport diagrams, all that stuff, and it does flight planning for you. So it'll lay your route out. You can lay out waypoints. It'll do all the stuff we used to have to do by paper electronically, which is amazing. Just that by itself is worth it. Not to mention that you can pull in weather. But the question is, just like you were saying, Pablo, is if we weren't familiar with how to use it, what are some of the ways that we could find out more? What do you think, John? Can you give us an idea of ways people could learn more about these?
Yeah, there's a lot of great resources, and most of them are free. Most of these companies have really rolled out a lot of great content to help you. ForeFlight and Garmin both have great video series on YouTube you can find. Honestly, as I know it's sacrilegious for some pilots, but you can read the manual. There's some good stuff in some of these manuals. We do, as I mentioned earlier, we do a website, iPad Pilot News, which is a free website that is 2-3 articles a week on tips and tricks for using these, and that grew out of a desire, just what you said, Chris, to help pilots get the most out of these and learn and discover those new features. So I'm biased, but that's obviously another great resource. The last thing though is just don't be afraid to use them. Sometimes pilots are afraid to just poke around, and the best way to learn these apps is just start pushing some buttons. You're not going to break it.
Exactly. Play around with them and go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, so we've got 6 things listed here, and they all have costs. And are any of them free? Because we were talking about value possibly, and value is something that's subjective to each individual. But I think they're all pretty much the same price point with different options that you can add on. But what do you think about that value question?
Yeah, there's one that actually isn't on there that's free, which is Flight Plan Go, which is an app version kind of the flightplan.com website. And that's traditionally been more aimed at sort of pro pilots or turbine pilots, but it's actually very useful for VFR pilots too. It's got charts and flight planning. So that would be a free one, but most of these offer free trials. So if you're comparing, this ends up being kind of a Coke and Pepsi question to some extent. So I always advise people just download the free version. You get 30 days to poke around. Most of these are around $100 a year for the basic, and they go up to $200-300 a year if you want some higher end features. But even at $100 a year, you get a ton of features with these, and that's cheaper than my old chart subscription was just for paper charts. So
that's exactly it. All right, great. So let's I think that's all great advice, and I definitely do want to just reiterate what John just said too about the iPad news, and then also the Fast 5 is a good one that Sporty puts out that I think is a great newsletter that I always enjoy. So let's go ahead and move on to the next one though. But yeah, electronic flight bags, check them out. Now, let's say that you want to use your tablet, whatever that may be. Make sure you do also know whatever the app you pick, that it works with the device that you have. So like, for example, ForeFlight is iPad only, Apple iPad only, whereas like Garmin Pilot will work both on Android and Apple. But how do we keep them in place? So let's give us the overview there, John. I know that you guys sell a ton of this stuff. What are you seeing as the stuff that's really popular when it comes to using them, holding them?
Yeah. I mean, step one is have a plan. An iPad can become a projectile in the cockpit if you don't have it secured. So maybe that's obvious, but I think you do need a plan to secure it one way or the other. The main breakdown we see is mount versus kneeboard or leg strap. And this is personal preference. It depends on the airplane you fly, kind of how close you sit to the yoke, how much window space you have. Some people really like a yoke mount to keep it in your scan. Some people, there's not really enough room for the panel, so they'll do a suction cup mount like you see here on the screen on a side window. But then other aircraft, that just doesn't work. Maybe if you fly a Cirrus, there is no yoke, and the side yoke over there gets in the way of that suction cup. There's an example where a kneeboard works really well. I fly helicopters a little bit. That's one where a kneeboard really is the right answer. So it depends on personal preference and the airplane you fly. And there's a whole range of options there. On the mounting front, RAM mounts have been popular for a long, long time. They've got a solution to basically mount anything to anything. On the kneeboard side, again, there's lots of options. The one you've got on screen there is a great universal one. This is the MyClip Multi, and it's just a basic leg strap, but it's pretty ingenious little design, and it'll hold any tablet. iPad mini, iPad Pro, iPad Air, with a case, without a case. So that's a really good option if you're looking for sort of a simple, slim kneeboard. It's really a matter of what you're flying and testing some of these things out. But whatever you do, I do think you want to have it close at hand and contained so it's not flying around.
Exactly. And in fact, I know I use a leg strap like that one, and that's my preference. Although, again, like you said, monitoring with an airplane, I typically fly 172. I go to the RV-12, the stick's in the way. I cannot use the thing on my leg, so I end up having to put it somewhere else. So be ready. How about the power part? Obviously keeping them charged. In some cases, you might be able to plug them into the panel, but you've got some great options here, or some suggestions.
Yeah, this is the number one way that an iPad will fail, in my experience. They're really pretty reliable devices, pretty amazing actually. And so the most likely way it's going to quit on you is because you forgot to charge it. And so obviously start every flight with 100% is a good rule, but that can't always happen. And so I always carry some type of backup. And most people, that's either a cigarette lighter plug like you see there, or a battery pack like you see there. Lots of good options there for many places. My only advice to you there is your iPad needs 2 or 2.4 amps. And if you go find the cheapest thing that's lying in your junk drawer at home, it's probably a 1 amp phone charger, not a 2 amp tablet charger. So just make sure if you've got a battery pack, which personally I like, because then I don't have to depend on the airplane. I can take it with me anywhere. Or if it's a cigarette lighter, just make sure you've got a 2 amp or higher USB port there. That'll keep your iPad nice and topped off. The benefit to me of the battery is I use it outside the airplane too. You can use it for camping, you can use it road trips. Those things are super valuable in everyday life too.
And I know I've got an old one that lasts a good while, and I imagine these newer ones are even better. They have more charge capacity and can really work. So totally. So yeah, make sure you've got something. Any questions there, Pablo, before we go to the next slide?
No, we covered it because I'm a ram mount guy on the yoke when I fly a Piper, and like John said, side stick Cirrus is hard, so the knee board comes into play on that one.
Yeah, perfect. That's right. Good. Maybe you have 2 options that you can use.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So again, moving along with that theme, we've got a couple that stay in this theme, and then we move on to some other stuff. But the useful apps, and I know, John, we were discussing this just yesterday, and you were talking about the fact that the big idea here is don't get sort of focused in on only an EFB. So do you want to tell us a little bit about what you're seeing here?
Yeah, a mistake I think some people make, ForeFlight, Garmin, these are amazing apps. They do so much. It's easy to get tunnel vision. So break out of that tunnel vision and really explore the app world. There's a whole bunch of good general weather apps out there that are, windy, as you see there is a popular one. Great way to sort of visualize wind and fronts as they move through. There's some great radar apps if you want to geek out on radar, Radar Scope, My Radar. Most of these are either free or very inexpensive, under $10. And so there's some great ways to take your weather knowledge to the next level, if nothing else for training there. They can help you plan a flight, but it can also just be a great way to improve your weather skills. And then there's tons of great training courses. As I mentioned, at Sporty's, we have our pilot training app, over 25 video courses in there on a whole slew of topics, from private flight training to aerobatics. So I obviously think that one's great, but there are tons of other good ones there, as you have on there, Chris. I've used some of these avionics sim apps for teaching VORs. It's a great way to simulate, to and from and OBS settings. It's just super easy to visualize different scenarios. And then you mentioned AR sim there, which is another interesting one folks may not have heard of, but it uses natural language processing and speech recognition essentially to allow you to practice your communications at home. So you don't have to be talking to ATC, you can practice scenarios. So lots of good ways there to get value out of a tablet at home for training, to improve your skills if you're not flying maybe as much as you wish you were. And many of these are inexpensive or free. So definitely something to check out in your spare time.
Absolutely. And in fact, 2 that I wanted just to really point out in that list that I've personally used when it comes to because through instruction, is that IFR one, that FlyGo IFR, which is a VOR sim. It also does believe it or not, NDB, but it's really amazing to teach people and just for you to practice even holding procedures, all that kind of stuff if you're doing instrument, or you just want to understand how to use VORs better, which I know for me was a mystery. Even during my private, my instructor trying to show me back in the old days with drawing pictures, I had no clue what he was talking about, much less the NDB. So that's a good one. And then the far aim, I have an app that I like to use. I happen to have ASA's version of it, but the far aim, which is on my phone, on my iPad, and it's great because you can search it, find stuff really easily. So that's a great one. And please don't forget our AOPA and Air Safety Institute videos.
Actually, I got another one though, is we always think of training as something that has to be guided front to back. You could use any of these resources, specifically just anything on the internet, but the one that I know I use and still do is Live ATC. I mean, if you want comms, I mean, listen to the real comms. Listen to your local airport that you fly out of. I fly out of DuPage. Listen to that. You'll be like, wow. Not only that, you become familiar with the dude's voice when you get there.
I'll give you a great pro tip there, Pablo, which is on most newer iPads, you can run two apps side by side with multitasking. And so if you know how to do that, what you can do is pull up a flight tracking app like FlightAware or Flight Radar 24 on your left side of the screen, have Live ATC on the right side of the screen, and you can be listening and watching the traffic. It's a great way to get a live feel for how traffic's moving, how did the community, hey, that's that airplane, and he just got told to turn right and intercept this. So great way to geek out.
That's a great idea.
I like them. I like that. Yeah. So just remember, training doesn't always mean spending money on a course. There's a lot of things you could do. Hell, you could even fly with somebody. It's not even an app, right? You could just get in the cockpit with a friend if they're flying. So, real quick question to go back one slide. Someone's asking a lot of knee pad stuff or knee board stuff, but someone's asking if there was a name to that strap, the knee board strap.
That's the MyClip Multi, that black one there. So MyClip has been around for a while, and the Multi is just their newest version of that because it is more universal, fits any device up to, I think, like an inch thick. So it'll do, like I said, Android tablets, Apple tablets, small ones, big ones, case, no case, MyClip Multi.
And let's quiz John here. Do you know the item code that they can find it easily?
I might, but I'd embarrass myself. So I just search for MyClip.
Okay.
Here's the funny thing. You could literally tell us it's Z-875. We'd be like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah, we wouldn't know.
Change it real quick.
Oh man, got the power. All right. So, and then along with those, obviously, it's like one of the really cool things about using the iPad or a tablet or like something like that in the cockpit is that you can hook it up with ADS-B, whether that might be ADS-B installed in the airplane, because you might have avionics that'll feed it to your tablet, or in the case of purchasing something like a Stratus, a Sentry, a Garmin. And the big thing here is, and I'll just give a quick overview and then John give us the finer details, but the basic idea is what will it do? It will bring in traffic and weather for you, traffic and weather coming into the cockpit, and really incredibly useful to keep you, sort of informed in the cockpit. But John, please tell us some of those details that you mentioned yesterday, including even getting to the stuff about what it doesn't do.
Yeah, I think however you get it, I really do think data link weather is a must-have these days. If you're flying beyond the local area, if you're making any type of cross country, it's so easy and affordable now to get it with an ADS-B receiver in your panel or a portable like a Stratus or Sentry. You've got that traffic and weather. There's no monthly subscription other than the app. So I just think it's a really must-have for cross-country flying. As you said, Chris, we're talking about receiving stuff here. So this is about ADS-B in, getting weather and traffic. Sometimes people get confused in ADS-B land because there's also ADS-B out, which is sort of the upgraded transponder that is required for a lot of airspace, Class B, Class C, things like that. So when we're talking especially about portables here, these are all ADS-B in. They have nothing to do with, complying with that FAA mandate. They have nothing to do with transmitting. But many of them, most of them really have a built-in battery. They work with popular apps. So mount it on the side window, turn it on. It connects by Wi-Fi typically, so there's not another wire in the cockpit. And it's really my flight bag. My iPad with an app and an ADS-B receiver is my flight bag. I've got charts, I've got en route navigation, obstacle alerts, weather, traffic, backup attitude even for many of these. So to me, that's like the modern flight bag, is a tablet with a good EFB app and a good ADS-B receiver. Because in addition to all the situational awareness you have, it's great backup. If the panel goes dark, I've got a self-contained navigation weather unit here that can really get me to somewhere where the weather's good and land.
And in fact, I just want to just hit on that point again that you just said too, is that I didn't even think about the fact I happen to use a Stratus mainly because I bought one some years ago and it still works, so I keep using it. And it's got AHRS in it. I wanted the attitude heading and reference system. So, and I've tested it in VFR conditions with someone else flying just to see how accurate it is. Crazy accurate. So in the case of an emergency, of course, only, not for actual, like not for regular navs, but I would trust that thing to help me get down out of the clouds or whatever it may be. So
Although,
yeah,
that's extra.
it is extra to get that. Yes. The other thing
Yes,
though, which
yes.
a good point though you should be aware of, is that make sure, and this is a common question that I would often hear, is make sure you get the device that matches whatever app you're using. So some of the apps, they don't work with all of them.
Yeah.
So like Garmin, and please correct me if I'm wrong, John, but I think the Garmin only works with the Garmin GDL. I don't know if it's changed now that it works with the Stratus, but in ForeFlight works with certain ones of them.
Yeah, ForeFlight works with Sentry and Stratus. Garmin now does work with both their GDL line and the Stratus 3 model, not some of the earlier ones. So you've got some options there. WingX works with Stratus, and so it's not universal, but there's some good options for most of the popular apps out there. If you just do a little bit of homework, you'll be able to get one that works well.
So probably the first step would be, like you said, is take advantage of those free trials. Often that's 30 days or whatever. Play around, figure out which one you like, and then you can then figure out, okay, well, which device would I want to buy to go with it?
So I think being the fringe guy again, also remember that there are other options. And for example, I use a Strat-X, not a Stratus. So there's an X instead of an S at the end. And that just means that it's a system it's a piece of hardware that is essentially put together, we'll call it out of parts. And there are companies out there that sell them pre-manufactured. And I'm not doing it for any other reason other than that's what I use, and I think it works fantastic. The only difference is the battery sucks on it. I'll be honest with you. And so I have to have a battery backup on it because it comes with one. It's horrible. They might have upgraded since, but so I always have to have another. But it's simple, right? Just done. You're signed in. So, and it's, look, I won't mention the price, but it's comparable, at least 50% less than a Stratus, and it's got all the same features. But also, again, if you go out there, you'll see it that you have to make it yourself. But there is somebody called Crew Dog, I think, that does make them, already made. So there's options, right? This isn't an exhaustive list, so just keep your eyes out there.
Yeah, because depending on how handy you are with the electronic part of that, you could mess with that in your confidence. But anyway, good stuff. Yeah. Definitely, I think a must-have, like you said.
One last thing. Well, more of a statement. We're so popular that the multi-clip is already sold out. Look at that. All we did was mention it was sold out. You're welcome.
Man, they missed the bonus thing at the end there. So for that.
Anyway, someone just said that they're sold out, so I said, "Yeah,
all right,
it's because of us."
Gotta get a hotline on the resupply on those. So
I'm working on it.
All right. So here's one that we have done like episodes on this. Like, it was way back at the very beginning when we first started doing this, so like over a year ago now. But home flight simulators, and I know talked about this before and how much I think they're great, but I know, John, you are also a proponent. So give us your thoughts and your perspective on like a home flight sim and what they're good for.
Yeah, there's really never been a better time to get into this, because with the Microsoft Flight Simulator, new version came out, 18 months ago, and X-Plane has continued to improve, and tons of new hardware. So the software is better than ever, the hardware is better than ever. And so I really think you can build a pretty good home system for not a ton of money. We're not talking thousands of dollars here. $500, you can have a pretty good setup. $200, you can get started. And the focus sometimes I think people get wrong. It's, well, what can I log? This is not a big fancy full motion sim. I can't log it. And to me, the logging is not what's important. The important part is if it keeps you current or it saves time in the airplane with the hobs running, it more than pays for itself. And that's really the value I see. I fly with X-Plane at home with just a fairly basic setup. I've got a Honeycomb Alpha yoke and actually the Redbird throttle there. And for me, it's about keeping my instrument scan up. It's for keeping kind of my basic cockpit flows sharp. It's for some of that decision-making stuff. And that's really what matters to me and has value. So I wouldn't get hung up in the legalities of what you can log, what you can't log. Build a system that is close to what you fly. You're never going to get it exact. And then to me, what it's best for is not the hardcore stick and rudder stuff. You're not going to stay sharp on crosswind landings with a home sim. That's not what they're best for. But like I said, they're great for instrument proficiency. They're great for cockpit flows. They're great for, use your checklist. Take out your checklist using the airplane and go through the cockpit and flip switches in the order. It's a great way to get better at that. As far as hardware, and you've got on there, I really do think, you got to have a yoke. You really shouldn't be trying to fly a flight sim with a keyboard and a mouse. That's not going to be much transfer. If you want to go to the next level, I really think rotor pedals help a lot because most of us are lazy with our feet in the airplane. So it's good to kind of get some of that muscle memory of that. And I mentioned software, lots of options, but probably Microsoft Flight Sim and X-Plane are the two big ones out there for most people at home.
Exactly. So someone asked about simulators for avionics, and so one of the things that I know that I liked, and I don't know if you've thought of this or what you think of it, but you could actually use the simulator for avionics. I mean, meaning even if you didn't fly the plane, you get your mouse and you can click on the avionics and you could do all of the same things that you would use in the cockpit. So in essence, it's almost like an avionics simulator. Because I know a lot of people I can't even keep up with them. So many statements about how bad some of these avionics simulators are. And so it's like, well, this is one idea here,
Yeah, and there's two thoughts there. One is you can buy add-on airplanes for these sims, and X-Plane in particular, because it's been out longer, has a little more developed marketplace. You can buy for $30, $40 I fly a whatever TBM 930 with G1000 avionics. You can probably find one that has that. And will the G1000 operate exactly like the airplane? No, but it's probably 95% plus. So that's one good option. If you really want to go all the way, there's a company called Real Sim Gear that makes actual avionics simulators for these home flight sims, and it's going to be a little more money, but you can actually have a physical box as well that you're twisting knobs and punching buttons. Takes a little more setup. I wouldn't advise that for a brand new simmer, but if you're technically savvy a little bit, Real Sim Gear is something you can check out. You can even get a full G1000 2-screen panel.
And exactly, and I've seen those, and they are really cool looking. And one other option too that's out there that I actually have is there are iPad apps you can get for a lot of this stuff too. So there is a G1000 iPad. There's the MFD and then the PFD, so you can do that. And then also ForeFlight and Garmin Pilot. I think Garmin Pilot does it as well, but I know I will use X-Plane, that sort of stuff, and it will sync up and let you use ForeFlight. So there's a way to hook it up to your sim, so you can be flying the sim and using your tablet at the same time while you're flying and practicing with it. So a great way to practice it without having the worries of being able to pause and when you're trying out something new. So lots of options. Sims are amazing for that, and it's great for proficiency, just like John said. But again, you can't log it for currency. That's okay. It's not what it's about.
That's right.
Cool. All right, let's go. Oh, look at this one. So we're talking about flight bags, but the non-electronic kind, because it's always so popular to talk about the EFB, the electronic flight bag. John, you mentioned it's like, I know that the slimmer, you said what you take with you, is it something like that size there?
Yeah, exactly. I learned to fly pre-iPad and everything, and so I was really proud of my first really big flight bag that could, haul everything I owned.
the pro size, right?
Or like a badge of honor. But these days we carry less. Like I said, for me it's a headset, an iPad, and an ADS-B receiver. Maybe a flashlight. A couple small things. So I have slimmed down my flight bag from a big duffel to more this vertical style. The black and orange one there is the Flight Outfitters Lift, which is one of my favorites because it's got just enough space to organize my gear, but it doesn't take up a lot of room in the airplane, and it kind of forces me not to carry too much clutter. Backpack is also a great idea. Chris, I think I know you use that other one on screen there, and if you want hands-free, there's lots of good backpack options. For me, what I really like is whatever it is, I want a bag that's got some padding. Because if I've got a $1,000 Bose headset and an $800 iPad and a $500 ADS-B receiver, and if I drop it on the ramp, I want to make sure there's enough padding that I didn't just blow my entire gear budget in one drop. So
And I was the same way because I used to, well, when I was a student pilot, of course, and I tend to carry a bunch of junk with me anyway, just as a normal thing. But for flying wise, I used to have the huge one, and I've gone to the backpack. I love the backpack. It's got the handle on it, so you can use it like a flight bag. But I love the fact that I can just throw it over my shoulder. So it is great. Highly recommend checking those out because again, you don't need to carry all that stuff we used to have to carry anymore. I mean, when I was flying professionally, I used to have to carry jet charts for the entire Western U.S. That was ridiculous. So yeah. All right. Any questions on that one, Pablo, before I move on?
No.
Okay. So check them out. Get a new flight bag. It's time for a new one. Clean the old one. In fact, I couldn't believe the stuff that I found in my old one when I did clean it out. Mints from 10 years ago. I mean, it was ridiculous.
It's funny, John, that you mentioned what you had in your bag, but yeah, I used to carry, because I used to fly several airplanes, the POH for all of the airplanes.
Yeah.
I have my sectionals. Remember those?
For years, I flew with the latest FAR AIM book in there. I have no idea why. I guess in case I, needed to look it up in flight, but I realized one day, why am I hauling this, 5-pound book around everywhere I go?
Well, it takes a hit on the weight and balance, doesn't it? Holy
Yeah.
cow.
It's ballast. All right. So again, kind of that idea we talked about with ADSB and those things with backup, having like ARs, but portable comms. I mean, this is not necessarily new tech necessarily, but I know that I've had to use a radio twice. In fact, it was twice in the same day where I've had to pull out the handheld and use it as a backup. So do you want to tell us a little bit about what's the latest here, John, with that stuff?
Yeah, here's one item where the iPad really can't do it. This is one of the few things the iPad can't do for you, which is, if your radio quits and you need to talk to ATC, that's where I think a standalone backup radio is cheap insurance. So I definitely fly with one. Same way I've had to use it for real. And a loss of radio is not a crisis if you're prepared. You hopefully find some good weather, and you call tower 5 miles out and say, I'm landing. You're not really asking permission. You're telling them that you got a problem and you're landing. And so the latest one on screen there that's been super popular for us is the PJ2. And the idea here is really a radio designed just for that backup use. Since we all have iPads, you don't really need a full-featured gee-whiz radio. You need a backup comm. So it's really simple to operate down to the level of having built-in headset jacks in it. So typically you'd have to, the panel went dark, you unplug your headset from the panel, you find an adapter and plug it into your radio, you find your headset cables. Not what you want to be doing while the heart rate's up. So the idea here is just unplug from your panel, plug your headset right into the radio and start talking. That way you're not trying to listen to a scratchy speaker over the engine. You can use your headset's noise canceling microphone and ear cups. So it's just a better way to do it. It's less than $250, so it's not really expensive. And to me, that's just one of those smart insurance policies to have that. If you want to go beyond that, there are some great models that have VOR, localizer, even ILS. So if you want kind of the full backup, you can get a NavCom. Sporty's SP400 has ILS. ICOM and Yaesu both make really good NavComs as well. So you can definitely go get those if you want. Just for me, what I see talking to pilots is most people these days just want that good, reliable backup comm because that's the situation you need help with.
And I do agree with you because that was the one thing I had to deal with was I had a spot in my huge flight bag with I have an old ICOM and I had to get the little adapter out and plug it in. So this is actually pretty cool. The fact you can plug it straight in. I like that. Just a quick question before we move on from that one is any idea how long the battery is? This like a rechargeable battery? Is this one where you're putting batteries in it? How does that work?
Yeah, great question. So most of these you can get for AA's or rechargeable. I actually like the AA's for most people because you're not going to use it every day. A rechargeable battery in your phone's a good idea. You're using it every day, you're recharging it. Radio, it's possible you can throw it in your flight bag and forget about it for a month and then need it one day. So that's where the long shelf life of AA batteries really helps. All of these radios, the transmitting is what eats up the battery life. So if you're mostly listening, you're going to get 20, 30, 40 hours out of batteries. If you're doing a ton of transmitting, say you're on the ground, line service or something, that's going to cut battery life down to 8, 10 hours on most of these. So it kind of depends how you're using it. But again, for most people, if you're not going to use it every day, I like the AA's.
Hey, so, I was just going to say, is there, does this particular one, because I love the headset plug and I love that.
Yeah.
Does this one have a dual battery option? So let's say I did forget, if I had AA's, can I just plug them in and use it?
It does, and there's even one better on this. Again, designed to be a backup. There's a USB-C power port on the side. So even if you just have the AA's, right, and the AA's die and you don't have the rechargeable, but guess what you've probably got? You know, my Stratus or my Sentry or my iPad Pro all run on USB-C. So I've got USB cables and USB chargers and battery packs, you know, flying out of the flight bag in all directions. You can just take one of those cables, plug it in, and obviously it won't charge the AA batteries, but it'll power the radio. So that's my ultimate backup is I've got USB-C power somewhere in my flight bag. And if the AA's die, I'll just plug it in and run it off that.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
All right. That'll be
Cool.
the next one to sell out right there.
Give it 10 minutes and I'll check.
All right. So kind of going along with that, you know, you want to be able to use your radio, but headsets, and admittedly, I've got a headset. I've got my David Clark headset from 1997 or something when I was a student pilot, and I've used it ever since, but I've been dying to update. And so we've got some really good options here. And I know, John, you wanted to talk a little bit about the fact that Bluetooth on these new ones is a great feature.
Yeah, Bluetooth has been around for a while. Lightspeed pioneered it, gosh, 15 years ago maybe in aviation headsets. And a lot of people think about that as, oh, that's great for music. You know, my passengers can listen to music on a cross country. And that's true. But over the last few years, what's also become a factor is, as you see there, those alerts from EFB apps. So ForeFlight in particular has added a ton of these. It'll call out terrain, TFRs, traffic, 500 feet, all kinds of different audio alerts. And the idea is to keep your head up and out of the cockpit. So instead of having to stare at your iPad the whole time, you can get these contextual alerts. And that's where it's really great to have your iPad paired with your headset so you can get that traffic call out and keep your head up. So I think Bluetooth, you can find it on almost every headset now, you know, all the Bose, almost all the David Clark, all the Lightspeed these days have them. But I think pilots should consider that as more than just a passenger feature because it does have real value. The other thing I would say just in general with headset is I really do think it can make flying not just more comfortable, but there's places that makes it safer. You know, I was flying a 182 actually to come visit AOPA 6-7 years ago, and over West Virginia, not, you know, super remote, but not an airport right underneath me. I noticed right away an engine change, and it ended up being a clogged fuel injector. Not a critical thing, but it definitely got my attention. And I'm convinced I noticed it sooner and could figure out a plan better because I had a good headset, good A&R headset, and right away I could hear it. There's a difference in that engine sound. Something happened, you know, constant speed prop. So it wasn't like I noticed an RPM drop. So anyway, I think it's not just comfort. I think there's a place for that headset to make flying help you make better decisions sometimes.
So, and just out of curiosity, and one of the key things is like to be able to try them on. And I know Lightspeed makes a great product. All these Bose and David Clark, I've tried on the David Clark. We got the chance at a show we were just at, Pablo and I, to try that on. But is that something that if people were to order one of these, like because you don't always necessarily see these sitting around, can they track it out? They don't like it, send it back, or how do you guys work with that?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a personal thing. Headsets are kind of like shoes in a way. You know, what works for you may not work for me. So we have what we call our test flight guarantee, 60 days. You know, try it, fly it. If you don't like it, send it back, switch it for another one, refund. We totally understand that's the way it works for most people. Is you got to go to put it in your airplane and see how it works. So that's the ultimate answer.
Cool. And again, I want to give a shout out to Lightspeed too for helping us out with our awards this year. So just if they're on the call or on the show or whatever, thank you for doing that. I know the CFIs will appreciate that, getting those for the awards. All right, let's see what we got. Anything questions before I move on, Pablo?
No.
All right, fair enough. Well, I know, Pablo, this was one of your favorite ones. You got excited about both of the things on this one, which are the wearables. So John, maybe tell us a little bit about the smartwatches, but I know I personally have this jacket. I love it. Tell us a little bit about these, and then Pablo, you can share your experience, I know, with that watch.
Yeah, this is the fun stuff now.
Yeah, this is good gadget stuff. Smartwatches, yeah, maybe not a must-have, but I think a lot of people use a smartwatch, whether it's a Fitbit or Apple Watch or whatever. Garmin's got a nice range of watches though, and just in the last 2 weeks they launched their latest one, which is this D2 Air X10. I took it on a trip last week in a Cirrus, put about 4 hours on it, and I was really impressed. It's a smartwatch for every day. You know, it'll track your run. It'll do your calendar notifications and everything. It integrates with Siri and Google Assistant and everything. But it's got a full fly mode, which is really neat. You know, I took off the other day and it detects a flight. I think it's like 200 feet and 30 knots, and it's automatically goes to fly mode. It boots up the GPS. It starts logging your flight. It's even got a pulse oximeter, which I really liked. You know, I had 4 hours at, you know, higher altitude in the cirrus, and I kind of wanted to keep track of that. And you just look down and get your, you know, your percentage there. So I was pretty impressed with it. I have to say the screen was great. It's pretty easy to use. You can even integrate with Garmin Pilot if you want to be a super geek and sync your complicated IFR flight plan from your, you know, your phone or tablet to your wrist. You can do that. So that newest one's pretty neat.
And then I just had a quick question with the Garmin Pilot. If you were syncing with that, would it give you some sort of vibration, like when there's a waypoint coming up, or it's time to, like, timing or that sort of stuff? Or
yeah, you can do all that. It's timers. It's got a barometric pressure altimeter in there, so you can set altitude alerts. I mean, you name it. If you can think of it, it can pretty much, you know, nearest airport. It's got a full worldwide database. You can do direct to. So yeah, it's crazy the amount of things they've put in
I
there.
mean, like the picture on the right, the white watch there, it literally is. There's a magenta line. I mean,
Yeah. An HSI.
and you know, I think one of the things that we glossed over real quick, it is on that second bullet, is though, you know, unlike the Apple Watches and stuff, God, I tell you, the batteries on these things are amazing. Because I got the Bravo, and I was shocked. I mean, it's days and days. You're looking at least 4 days on the battery with that. Even if you're using the cockpit, it's not like land and recharge right away. You know, 2 hour flight, you still get another day and a half out of it. You know, obviously, the more you use it, right? But 2 hour flight, you can still get another day and a half, 2 days out of it. It's amazing battery.
cool.
No, seriously, if there's one thing to push, and this is the fun stuff, all the other stuff was safety and yeah, you got it. But this is fun stuff that actually works, has a purpose, you could say. Yeah. So
yeah, it's pretty cool. And then there's this jacket. I know that I've got this jacket. I use it for, I don't just use it for flying. It's like in the winter because it's warm for that. It's got plenty of room. But I know I use it just for, like, just in the winter time. It's like walking the dog, that sort of stuff. The thing's great. So a really cool jacket, and not really that expensive as I recall. It wasn't terribly
Yeah, it's
pricey.
I think 129 bucks. My favorite. I have the same way, Chris. I wear I get to pick the jacket I want, right? Working at Sporties, and this is the one I wear. It's so comfortable. It's like, it's the little things, you know, but in the cockpit, it's got this like big bi-swing back, so you can actually move your arms without getting all bunched up.
Mhm.
And it's got, this sounds silly, but pilots will appreciate it. It's got really big cuffs. So if you're wearing one of these nice big fancy pilot watches like the D2 Bravo, Pablo, it's got room for it. Doesn't get all caught up on it. So sometimes it's those little details that matter. And I've been wearing one for a couple of years now. I love it.
yeah, and you look good. I mean, that's the other thing.
So Pablo, you better get on there and order one before this one sells out. Just telling you.
Oh my God. I'm going right now.
Cool. All right, so our last category, we've got 2 more slides here, but both are in the safety and utility category. And I know, John, you just mentioned the fact that the Garmin, is it the D2 X10, I believe, if I'm recalling that correctly, has a pulse oximeter built into it. We got CO detectors. Cool flashlight I'd love you to talk about, because that's a great idea, because we always tease that flashlights are a great place to store dead batteries. And then the heat tester. So tell us a little bit about these items here.
Yeah, these are not to be overlooked among all the, you know, exciting stuff about fancy headsets and watches, but I do think pulse oximeter is overlooked. I know the first time I flew with one, I was flying a 210 and I'd been at 9,000 feet for 2 hours, and I put that on and I could not believe I was at 86%, which is pretty low.
Yeah.
And what basically I learned is, you know, above 7,000 feet for a long time, you need to be thinking about oxygen. You're not going to keel over, but it's going to degrade your performance. You're going to get that headache. So anyway, pulse oximeters now you can get for under 50 bucks. I think if you fly above 7,000 feet, you ought to consider one. CO detectors, NTSB has been on a big push here lately to not require, but highly encourage pilots to fly with CO detectors, which I think is a great idea. I had a CO scare myself in a helicopter where the exhaust cracked, and I had a CO detector, and I'm frankly convinced it saved my life, because it went to over 100 parts per million, which is a lot. And I thought, oh, well, that's annoying. But I turned off the heat and finished the trip. And when I landed, told the mechanic, you know, I got some nuisance alert you should look at. And about 2 hours later, he sent me a picture of the exhaust with a hole about the size of a quarter in it.
Oh, wow.
So I'm definitely a believer in that. You can get a CO detector built into, like a Sentry ADS-B receiver has that built in, which is a nice bonus, or you can buy a separate one. I do think you should buy a decent electronic one. You know, the old spot on the panel, yeah, it's better than nothing, but I really think you can do better than that. For $100, $150, you can get a good electrochemical sensor. In the wintertime, with our typical heating systems on small airplanes, I think that's important. Flashlights, I'm with you. If you're a pilot, you've got a dozen flashlights at least. Some of them might even work. Maybe one of them's got batteries at work. There's a bunch actually of new ones. There's a new Flight Gear one, a couple new Flight Outfitters ones. The one on screen there, the Flight Gear one, I really like it because it's got like a red task light on the side for night vision. It's got a big white light on the front, LED obviously, but it's a rechargeable battery. And you can even charge your phone off of it. So if your phone's running down, you kind of unscrew it, you plug in the USB cable, and you can take the power the other way, which is, I think, a really cool feature for backup.
That's awesome. And so I think that's a great one. I know for me, I had one that was a headset mount. I know that I don't think they make the one that I've got anymore, but I see they've got the ones that go on your head or the strap. I find that crazy useful for night flying. I did that all the time, and just having that ability with, especially flipping red, white, whatever, obviously not white in the cockpit, but red or the different colors. And that way, wherever I'm looking, it's going to shine the light where I'm looking rather than your hands are free to do what you need to do. So having a good flashlight, some good options there are great. And how about this multi-sump thing? It's crazy looking in the picture there.
I love it.
What is that?
I love it.
Yeah, you would think that like technology could make the humble fuel tester better, but you'd be wrong. A guy who's a pilot and kind of an inventor in Illinois makes this, and we sold it for years. It's really ingenious. So take a new Cessna 172. I think you've got 13 different sumps now, in the wings, right? 5 and 5 and 3 underneath. That becomes like a really big, messy job. And so what he did with an engineer's mindset is you've got a small sample cup at the top there, and then the larger reservoir on the bottom. So what you do is you go along and you sample, look at it, and then you just push it, and there's a little spring there that drains it down into the main compartment. Then go to the next one, sump it, check it, drain it, sump it, check it. So instead of having to sump it and dump it out everywhere, you can quickly drain them all. And then once you've done that, and if you have clean fuel, it's got a little pour spout, so you can just go pour it back into the tanks and save all your fuel. So I really like it. I think it's just kind of a creative way to address an everyday problem, which is getting fuel all over your hands and wasting a lot of it.
That's cool. Very neat. So the multi-sump.
Yeah.
I like it. All right. And then our last one before we wrap things up is the idea, we've been talking about this, and I know Pablo, probably close to you for home, living up there near Chicago, but survival stuff, whether it's like this kit here, but also obviously a flotation device. So
it's obviously more regional, right? More specific to where you fly, but you can see there's that winter picture on the top right there. But hey, John, as we were talking yesterday, said something about, if you're flying over Lake Michigan, why not have that little yellow thing there? Just in case. I mean, it's, Lake Michigan's pretty wide. It's several hundred miles across when you fly. So these are little things. And, when you look at these, I always thought, you're $1,500 for a raft. Hey, you don't need a life raft. I mean, in the winter, I'll probably land on the ice anyway on Lake Michigan. But like that yellow one on the bottom left there, I think that's like $60 some. It's not overly crazy. And then they last how long? I don't have to replace it every year, do I, John?
Nah, some of them are 1 year. You should check. Most of them are 3 to 5 years. Some of the fancy ones are even 10 years. So that's definitely a piece as you're doing your homework to check. But you probably aren't going to be replacing every year now.
Yeah. And then obviously the other stuff is in case of emergency. But when we were 2 weeks ago, we were at a conference, Chris and I, and there was a guy talking about his harrowing experience, which it really was. And he always carries, now I forgot what it was. Oh, his beacon.
The locator thing. Yeah, the beacon thing.
Yeah, and he said he always carried it with him, and thank God he did that day because, well, they needed it and he couldn't access it. So, and what was the other one? Oh, the seatbelt tear thing, right?
That's right, to get the seatbelt off because it gets jammed.
Yeah, he goes, it doesn't do any good if it's in your bag. So when he gets in the cockpit, he puts it in his pocket. That way, and that one time he needed it. It was a very serious accident, actually.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a laughing matter, but all of that stuff helped him because he had it. So with him, not just in the back, right? So that's the key here too, is don't throw this stuff into a bag in the back and then oops, you need it.
Yeah, the best advice I got there was somebody told me survival gear is what you're wearing. Everything else is luggage.
Yeah.
So if it's on you, it's survival gear. Otherwise, maybe it makes you feel better. But I'm a huge fan of the beacons, like on the bottom right of the screen there. That's a personal locator beacon. I really think that changes the equation from, forget making camp and living for 5 days in the mountains. You want to get found. And one of these new 406 beacons with GPS built in, push the button, the cavalry's going to be coming, and they're going to find you a lot faster. And so,
Right.
to me, if you got to have one thing, if you're flying to the Bahamas, you're flying out west over remote territory, I really am a fan of those personal locator beacons. I just frankly don't trust my old ELT in my airplane. I'd rather have it with me. So
That's fair enough. That, yeah, exactly. And it's like one of the things where you can then activate it too. That's what the guy was talking about. I had it strapped onto him and just he activated it and got help pretty quickly as well. It was in a few hours.
Oh, yeah.
And they were way out
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
They were some of us in Idaho
Oh,
going backcountry flying. So yeah.
middle of
So
nowhere. Middle of nowhere.
exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. And the other part I like about this too, that life vest there, is that reminds me of when we get the briefings on the airline. So we could just do that whole thing too. Really make it look like a show when we're doing our passenger brief. Right. Anyway, check this out. We're coming to the end. We're going to answer questions here, but let's just do the wrap up and then we'll take any questions that we've got. But John, you want to tell us about this? Because you guys presented a special offer for our listeners here today.
yeah, want to thank everybody for joining us. Appreciate it. And if one of those things piqued your interest and you need a new pilot watch or jacket or whatever it might be, use that code AOPA 222 for free ground shipping in the US. And that's good for a couple weeks here through March 9th. So if that pushes you over the edge, take advantage of that.
Cool. Thank you for doing that. So
Well,
AOPA,
you better. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say,
John,
AOPA
call
222.
HQ. Call HQ because the rush is coming.
We'll go get ready.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Brief everybody in the press room there.
Yeah.
All right, so I can't tell you how many questions we have. So let's get this. Oh my goodness, I can't even keep up. I stopped doing writing them down.
Should we
But
do
let's
the
go.
sort of what's coming up next, and then we'll go ahead and take all the questions?
Yep.
Okay. So
Yep.
really quick, just for those, we'll just do the wrap up, and then we're going to take questions. Don't forget that AOPA 222 code. I'll bring that slide back up in a second. But Stephen, do you want to tell us a little bit about our AOPA app and pilot passport, as you always like to do?
Always like to do. So within the AOPA app, there is the passport function, and we have a special code we offer for attending our webinar. So if you go into the little menu button, there should be an option to pull up your passport information. Under the My Passport stuff, there is the option to enter an affiliate code. So you click on the My Pilot Passport, put in the affiliate code, it'll get you some points for attending our webinar. And I know the folks that run this for AOPA do have like leaderboards and little contests every once in a while, so it gets you some points towards some prizes and drawings they do. It's kind of fun because it gets you little badges and things, and it does provide information on local airports and things like that. So plug it in, get some points if you're on the app with us.
That's YCF Web 022422. You can see it's the date. By the way, just to help our folks out too, is this is not for Wings credit. So the Pilot Passport app thing, this code is not the Wings credit one. Wings credit is automatically done for you since you registered, as long as the email that you gave us is the one with your Wings account. That automatically gets you Wings credit. So this is not the Wings credit code. I'm hoping that's clear. Going back to my teacher mode, saying things at least 3 times.
Yes, and
Well,
I will take care of that. There's nothing else you need to do. I pull the list. You don't need to email me. You don't need to contact us. I take care of it.
You got it.
And thank God you did, because we just had another question of how you get it. So it is the #1 asked question.
All right, so there it is again. There's the Pilot Passport. Let's go back to the oh, by the way, real quick, before we go to the questions, next episode's coming up March 24th, 2022, and the topic's going to be Ask a CFI almost anything. Who knows why?
Almost.
Ask a CFI. I don't know why. Let's ask a CFI. So it's basically, you can see the theme there. Ask a CFI whatever you want and see if you can stump us effectively. All right, let's go back here.
Yeah. Well, no, that's not fair, Chris, because the stumping part's easy. That's not fair. Yeah.
Hey, I could come up with not the right necessarily, not the right answer necessarily, but an answer.
All right, cool. So QA, ready, John? Chris?
I'm ready.
Pablo? Oh my goodness. Okay, so all over the board. I just returned to flying after 35 years. What are the most significant changes in equipment that are now must-haves? So this might be like a big-time overview of this entire thing, of everything we talked about and things we didn't. What do you think are just maybe must-haves? Not the watch, not the jacket.
It's the iPad. If you learned with VORs and paper charts, to me the iPad is where it is. There's a learning curve, but once you learn it, it is just so much easier and so much better. And I'd say if there's one thing to invest time and money in, it's getting the most out of an EFB app.
Yeah, I'd agree. And in fact, I would even go on a little bigger scale with that, talking about what's the biggest change is GPS. So whether it's GPS on your iPad, using it that way, which I love, it's like, and I was always one old school, use the chart. I teach my students, you got to learn how to do pilotage and dead reckoning just in case. But GPS overall has changed the game for so much of this stuff, and the ability to use that with your iPad is huge.
So
it's a wonderful tool.
So I agree with that, but in my opinion, I'm going to go kind of a hybrid there. Is even though GPS did change things, I think the iPad, along with ADSB, in cockpit weather, things that you couldn't even when I got my license 15 years ago, to dream of these things at your disposal at any moment is ridiculous, and I think flying some of the if you've been a loyal watcher, you'll know that I do make a lot of long flights. Chicago to Denver in a 182 is something that would probably be kind of scary. But an iPad with weather and traffic, come on. You know what I mean? It's like it's all right there. How many countless trips to Frederick from Chicago and back, and all that stuff. And the things that I encountered that I was able to either go around or actually anticipate better because of the in-flight stuff, in cockpit is ridiculous. So that to me is probably the biggest changes.
And I have to admit too, because I remember being a student pilot, fumbling my way around with VORs and then seeing an airplane go, like, where did that come from? Now we don't have that anymore. Now we can see them on the iPad before that happens.
So this one's for me. What happened to the cat? Yeah, she just needs her 2 seconds of appearance. She walked by, gave you a finger with the tail, and we're good. So okay, okay. Which headsets or EFB are the best values for newbie pilots? Again, value is probably not the question here, but I would say probably what are the you're not going to suggest a Lightspeed Zulu for maybe a new pilot, right?
Yeah. What do you?
Yeah. It depends on your version of value. I would say one that's a great one is the Lightspeed Sierra. It's not inexpensive. It's $650, but it's active noise reduction and Bluetooth. So if you're looking for the most bang for the buck, kind of most of those, high-end features, that's a really great one. And I do think there is an element of like buy once, cry once, go ahead and invest in a good one up front. If you're not going to do that, then you're probably looking at a passive, and there's plenty of good passives. You mentioned, Chris, the old David Clark H10 13.4.
Yep.
$250, $300-ish is a really good indestructible headset. You can't break it. It doesn't have Bluetooth, doesn't have ANR, some of those features, but it's really well made, it's really reliable, and that's going to get you around that $300 price.
Yeah,
So
I've had mine for 25 years, I think. And in fact, I was just talking to the folks at David Clark, and they'll even refurbish it for you. So that's why I know they have trade. I don't know if you guys do. I think you guys do that trade-ins on old headsets. I'm like, I don't want to give up my old David Clark. I like it. It's like I want to get a new one, but I like my old one too. So
yeah. All right. Sorry, I'm going to move through these. We got so many. I will tell you right up front, we're not going to get to all of them. So I apologize up front. Okay, they're coming in fast and furious. I'm still a paper pilot, and we did get several of these, so we'll knock out a couple stones with this one, or birds with this stone. I'm still a paper pilot. We're talking tablets now. What are the charts available for e-readers? I'm thinking e-ink displays or something like that. So I know that somebody said, can I download them if I don't have like a ForeFlight? And I wasn't really sure.
I don't think there's a great option. I mean, charts are available for free online. You can get, especially like approach plates are easy to get. Sectionals are a little harder to download. They're more, you need an internet connection. Gosh, I don't know. Your best bet there, like I said, is probably Flight Plan Go, because it's a free app and it works on Android and iOS. So it'll work on a ton of devices and it's free. That's generally my best suggestion if you just want, inexpensive and you want charts. It's a pretty decent app.
And I will mention for those that are just maybe trying to dip their toe into it, and maybe they don't want to put out the expense for an iPad or a tablet, but if your phone screen is big enough, you can do it like that. All these apps work on there as well. So you could. In fact, that's what I did when I first got into using any EFB. I did it on my phone first, and I was just messing around and seeing which one I liked, and then from there invested in going to the iPad and everything else. So that would be one way to play with it. But yeah, I don't know of any e-ink ones, and I do know, like you said, John, the sectional files off the FAA's web, or NACO's website or whatever, is huge. It's just a massive file, not really something you can use easily.
Yeah. Okay, what's the name of that VOR NDB app that you guys talked about earlier?
Oh, that was I know that, John, I know you guys have one at Sporty's as well that you had suggested. The one that I was talking about was this. It's called FlyGo. It's just off the App Store. It was Apple. I don't know if they do Android or not. They may, but it was the company was FlyGo, and it's called IFR Flight. There's also one called IFR Trainer, but the Flight one's the one that I've used the most with teaching and playing around with. I know you guys. Did you have one? Do you want to suggest too, John?
No, I'm blanking on the name. It's not one we did, but it's one I've used before, and I can picture the icon, but I can't come up with the name.
And I know some of these apps are available. I noticed in the catalog as well. If you go online, you can get them through you guys, and then I assume it gets you to the App Store to download or whatever. So cool. That's a great one. I love that one.
Okay, does the jacket have internal pockets?
Good question.
I don't recall it having big internal
don't
pockets.
think so. It's got two nice outside pockets for your hands that are nice fleece line things, but I don't.
And it's got this is the pilot part. It's got a spot to stick your sunglasses, like right here too.
Right here.
Yeah.
I don't think there's an inside one.
I don't remember one either on the inside.
I guess we'll have to go to Sporty's and ask.
Yeah, in fact, there's more pictures of Sporty's. On the I only just took this one because they gave an overview, but there's pictures of the inside of it there too, so you'll be able to tell.
That's cool. All right, does Sporty's, or do you know of, if you don't, have a device that will shatter a canopy if it gets jammed?
Yeah, I don't know that we have a specific one. I know like most Cirrus come with one of those, kind of multi-tools like you'd see for a car, a seatbelt cutter, and then like a diamond head that you can smash the window out. So I don't know that there's anything special aviation there. I think just one of those regular ones. Flight Outfitters has a kind of pilot knife that's a knife and a seatbelt cutter and has one of those breakers. That'd probably be the best option. And I don't see any reason why that wouldn't work for, aviation use as well. You're just trying to crack it and get out. So
yeah, okay. All right, now I've never used a Sentry Mini, but it says when using the Sentry Mini, should the traffic be turned off in ForeFlight?
No, Sentry Mini is sort of the baby brother of the full-size Sentry. It doesn't have a battery or the AHRS, but it's got the full ADS-B weather and traffic. So no reason you shouldn't be using the traffic there.
I got a couple of these too. Do you know the range for that PJ2?
Yeah, so the range on all these, a couple things. One, portables are limited to 5-6 watts peak output. That's FCC law, so there's not much variability there. And then again, it's VHF, so it's line of sight. So altitude's your friend here. On the ground, your range is going to be much more limited than 4,000 or 5,000 feet. I will tell you that in my experience, I've done a lot of flight testing with it. You can easily call a tower 10 miles out. And I've had pretty decent luck even at 20 miles out talking to people. So, calling center from 50 miles out, you'll be able to hear them because the reception is much, much better than the transmission range. But 50 miles out trying to reach a center frequency, maybe not. But 10, 15 miles out calling tower because you're coming into land, or if there's, a repeater close by, I think that's pretty safe in that 10, 15 mile range. Again, listening, you'll pick up, you can pick up 8 to 60 miles out at altitude. The main limitation is transmit. And one more point there, if you own your airplane, you can rig up a connection so that you can run the portable radio through your aircraft's, roof mounted antenna, which will dramatically increase range. Oh. It's not that expensive. Basically, you just have a little plug in the panel and then a little kind of pigtail cord, and you unscrew the rubber duck antenna from the radio, put that cable on that plugs in, and that'll, I think, easily double your range on transmit. Wow. So if you're serious about it and you own an airplane, Avionics Shop can do that in like an hour. It's not a big job.
Cool. All right, now this one's going to be a little, oh boy, look who's back. A little longer, but is there, we've talked about apps and stuff, and there's, right, we could probably have a week's worth of every app out there. Do you think, in terms of maybe a new flyer or someone who just doesn't have all the technology, but just maybe an iPhone, what would be kind of the basics of some apps to fly with? Maybe some weather, some E6B calculation, something like that. One of the things I know I use all the time is Windy. Love that app. And I do have the E6B with all the functions from Sporty's, which is a great app on my iPhone. Yep. But anything else you guys can think of that would really be helpful for iPhone apps, stayed flying?
I really think you ought to make friends with an EFB app, you know, ForeFlight, Garmin. They run great on phone. Both of those companies have added most of their features, like you said, Chris. They're on the phone now as well as the iPad. So if you're, I don't think those are just apps for, you know, IFR pilots or turbine pilots or anything. I think there's tremendous value, maybe even more value for a pilot flying a small airplane, a flying club, a renter where you're jumping between airplanes. The benefit to me there is that's your consistent avionics between airplanes. One airplane may have King radios, one airplane may have a Garmin GPS, but if you've got your phone and your app, it transfers between airplanes. So I would give it some serious thought. You know, it's $100 a year for I think both Garmin and ForeFlight and the base package. And the base package is really good. I mean, it's not stripped down. I think that's a really good investment in your flying budget. So I would highly suggest you spend some time.
And I would completely agree with that too, is to go play with, get the free trial, try it out. If you're a CFI out there, if you happen to be a CFI and you belong to one of the organizations like SAFE or NAFI, you can even get a discount on your subscriptions to those things too. So they do a lot of that stuff, like the stuff we would do with an EFB. It does all of that. It does your time, speed, distance, all those calculations for you. So definitely play with it. And that $100 base level anyway is really kind of designed for VFR flying, not even necessarily meant for the IFR part. So not that it doesn't do it, but it's like it's designed for that. So
this next one, Chris, you gotta be quiet. I have to be quiet. This one says, John, purchased Honeycomb Alpha and Bravo from Sporties. When will Charlie rudder pedals be available? Thanks, Peter.
Oh boy, Peter, I wish I knew. It's tell me if you want to play 2021 bingo, and I'll say supply chain, and you can try bingo. The Charlie is the rudder pedals to go with the Honeycomb Alpha, which is the yoke, and the Bravo, which is the throttle quadrant. They're great. Those are our best sellers. They're fantastic flight sim gear. So obviously the question is, the one piece you're missing is rudder pedals, and Honeycomb has said they're working on it. I expect to have it maybe middle of this year, you know, summertime, but I just am hesitant to give you any more details than that because they're working hard on it. But you know all the stories about, you know, computer chips and shipping delays and stuff. It's just really hard to predict a new product at this point. So I hope we have it this summer, but we are not taking orders yet for it for exactly this reason, that we really don't have a great date. So I kind of don't want to disappoint people.
Fair enough.
Cool. All right, so I think this is a good time for a PSA. We had Michael. Thank you, Michael. He says he loves our webinars, which is fantastic. We do too.
So does the tennis score, by the way.
How come you ignore Seattle Avionics FlyQ? It's a great app. So I already responded, but I'd like to say, like, we're not ignoring anything. If there's something we didn't mention, it's not because it's bad, or mostly we either forgot it or it's not one of the most widely used apps. For example, FlyQ, it is a great app, but ForeFlight and Garmin are essentially 95% of the market. We all use them. That's why we've talked to them. I wish I could talk about FlyQ. I haven't personally used it in about 12 years. I don't know about you guys. Maybe you guys something to say about FlyQ. Have you guys used it recently?
John, I had a student that used it recently, so.
Okay.
I used it a little bit. Yeah, I mean, it's a good app. It's got tons of features. You know, it works with a lot of ADS-B receivers. Nothing wrong with it. It's what you said, Pablo. That majority of people I talk to are Garmin Pilot or ForeFlight, and on the pro end, maybe a little more Flight Plan Go. But nothing wrong with FlyQ at all.
Yep, that's cool. My student. I had a student using it too and liked it a lot, and it was very similar in the stuff that it was able to do. So yeah, if you like it, that's why we said too. I think the big part is, go do the free trials with whatever ones you're interested in, play with them and see what one just makes sense to you. And that's the one you should probably go with. So.
All right. So, sorry, I'm responding to someone to meet at Pilot Pete's. Okay. So someone said about FlyQ as well. So we got a lot of those. The Fly Outfitters Pilot Survival Knife has a window breaker. Look for it. What's a brand of backup radio that takes either AA or USB-C? That's the PJ2. PJ2.
Is that the name of the company?
Which, of course, it's a Sporties. It's we make it.
Okay, cool.
We wanted this radio forever, and nobody made it, so we said we're going to go make it. Your decoder ring there obviously is, a lot of pilots call them regular 2 headset plugs, PJ plugs, because they're PJ whatever 22 part number, and there's 2 of them. So that's our very fancy naming. It's PJ2 because there's 2 PJ jacks in the top of the radio.
Cool.
See, there it is.
There it is. Okay. This one's a little more, I don't know anything about this, so if either of you two have it, iWatch apps for aviation.
Yeah, it's funny, when the Apple Watch first came out, there were like a bunch of apps for it, and then they kind of faded away. So like ForeFlight had an Apple Watch version, and it went away. So there aren't a ton. We have our E6B app, which you mentioned, Pablo. That does work on Apple Watch, for example. Stratus Insight, which was another one of those EFB apps we mentioned, used to be AeroV. They actually have a pretty decent Apple Watch app. You can even do like little airport diagrams and stuff. In my opinion, they're not that useful for everyday use. It's good for some of them. The best use, I would say, is you can do a complication. So one of your watch screens can show like local METAR, and that's handy. But it's just too small for too much of the day-to-day stuff, navigation, airport information. So you'll find some out there, like My Radar, the Radar app. You can get radar on your watch. There's a few of them out there, but there's not nearly the bustling market for it as there is on phones and tablets.
So yeah, and the other thing too is, well, it's disappointing, but I think one of the things too that we have to remember is it doesn't have to be an aviation app. I mean, there's weather apps that are not aviation apps, and I don't know if Windy has an iWatch one or an Apple Watch app, but I mean, Windy's a great app, and if it does, I would use that.
Yeah.
And the other thing to point out is, the modern, the latest generations of Apple Watch have a pulse oximeter built in as well. So just like we talked about with Garmin, that's not an aviation feature, but it's very useful for pilots. So.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so we had someone actually ask us, believe it or not. I don't want people to believe, but they're like, can I leave now and still get AOPA wings? Yes, you may.
Sorry about that.
Yes,
You're
yes.
Dismissed.
Yes, once the official presentation is done, I've got the list of attendees. You guys are good to go. I'll take care of it.
Okay, good. There you go. Why leave? This is great. Thank you, Paul. All right, gosh, I got it. All right, this guy says maybe too basic of a question to bother, but there is no stupid or basic question, just stupid answers, okay? I still use a desktop PC and a flip phone, which is 10 cents a minute. Hello. Never used an iPad. I imagine if I got an iPad, I could download sectionals with Wi-Fi, but could I get all the information that's not already loaded onto the iPad in flight without other hardware or connections with additional costs? This one's loaded. Let's try to cover this one quickly, huh?
Yeah. This is important though. So the short answer is no. You need to preload your iPad before you fly. The only thing you're going to get in flight is through an ADS-B receiver like a Sentry or a Stratus or something. You're not going to get internet connection in the air unless you're flying a Gulfstream with go-go Wi-Fi on it. So you do need to preload it. So at home before flight, download your charts so they're stored for offline use. You're not going to have weather, like I said, unless you have one of those receivers. So no, you're not going to have internet in flight, but that doesn't mean it's not useful. It's with a GPS and your downloaded charts, you've got moving map, you've got terrain, you've got time en route, you've got all kinds of things. So it's not we'd all love to have internet in flight, but it's not a huge limitation the way these apps work.
And in fact, I will say that, like I told you, I kind of dipped my toe and sort of, I didn't go full bore right into the whole thing when I started. And I purchased probably from Sporty's a Bad Elf, it's a little GPS thing, a little more affordable at the time. And so it's just a GPS. So I had the GPS. I plugged that with I had a Wi-Fi only iPad, and then I was using ForeFlight, just showed me that part. I didn't have the weather, but that was a great way to start. And then from that, I was like, this thing's so awesome. That's when I was like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and pony up and get the Stratus, and so I can get all the weather and everything else.
Cool.
In fact, I started with Garmin Pilot, and then I went to ForeFlight. I've used them both. They're both good apps.
So we have confirmation. Windy and AeroWeather both have Apple Watch apps. So
there we go. Good.
I knew our people are awesome. Chris, what musical instrument do you play? Who cares? Let's see. Good job, guys. Okay, gosh. So, now we've got answers, so it's starting to get really bubbly here. Sorry. What's a good avionics sim? I've looked at Garmin and Aspen ones, and in his opinion, they're not very good ones. So he didn't put it quite that way, but he doesn't like them as much.
So I'll give a maybe not satisfying answer, but the best sim is the avionics in the airplane. and you can buy for a couple $100 a portable power supply to run on the ground. And you know, if you're flying club or FBO, obviously talk to your schedule and everything. But we do it a lot here at Sporty's Academy at our flight school. Roll it into the hangar, plug in one of these ground power units. They're not that expensive. And then you can run the avionics all day long without the engine running, without the hubs running, but without running down the battery. And sometimes the only way to really learn it is to sit in the actual airplane and twist the knobs and push the buttons. So if you're kind of underwhelmed with either flight simulator options or with training apps, I think sometimes that's the best answer.
And I'd agree that because it's part of that pushing the buttons for real that's really useful. I will say that like I mentioned some of the ones on the App Store, but Garmin, I think, does a decent job with, they will do certain units, and it's limited on the units they provided. I know for one that we have here, the airplanes we use are the Garmin KTNs. I think I forget the 750 and 850 or whatever. And so that app is pretty darn good. You do have to like push on the screen, but look to see if the manufacturer maybe makes one, and those do exactly what the units will do, other than actually, like you said, being able to touch the buttons is really nice. But
Cool.
and by the way, I play bass.
All right, so 10 more minutes. Off topic, Sporty gives absolutely extraordinarily generous support to the Young Eagles program. Many thanks to them. That's Kurt. We do need to point out all the good, right? So congratulations on that. Okay, moving on. GPS. Someone says cheap GPS. So I think if it's aviation, it's not cheap. If it's electronics, it's aviation, it's even not cheaper. So, I think cost conscious value, right? A lot of people said the word value today. Like, these things are going to last. I am with most people. I'm not going to go out and spend $800 on something like that I don't think works. But look, a Stratus works and works really well. It's not something you'll have to replace. On the whole, sure there are, right? Everyone's got their horror story, but it's not something that you'll have to replace in a year. You know what I mean? That $400, $500, $600, $700. That's generally the cost of everything in aviation, unless it's a jacket, right? Or sunglasses. But even iPads are expensive, but you can get those reduced. Which leads me to my next point. Before I get to some of these other ones, is someone asked about how can I get in? I've never used iPad, stuff like that. A lot of people have said they overheat. As you've watched this award-winning program many times for you out there, know that I make 6-7 hour trips, right? I've never had one overheat in flight. Okay, I had one overheat when I left it on a 1-hour flight to lunch to Indianapolis. I left it on the panel, and when I came back, it was overheated. Yep. My fault, right? Overheating obviously can be a problem, but I don't know how you can overheat on a yoke or on a window mount like that. It doesn't. Look, I'm sure it's happened to people. It doesn't happen often, but the iPad, I think, is a great tool for the cockpit. I think John said it earlier. That's probably one of the tools that is mostly like the Swiss Army EFB of things in there. There's other great ones, but that's really one of the better ones out there.
My advice there is, I've had in 12 years, 11 and a half years flying with the iPad, I've had one overheat, same situation, Pablo, my fault, put it up on the glare shield, terrible idea.
Yep.
The tip is, it's different in every airplane, but try to keep it out of the sun. So think about your knee border mount so it's out of the sun. Try to keep some air moving in the cockpit. Big, thick cases are not your friend. They can hold the heat in. So if you need to make the iPad go naked, there are cooling mounts. XNOT makes them. We sell them. They're actually pretty good. I don't think most people need them, but if you fly in Phoenix in the summer or South Texas or something, there are these mounts that your iPad snaps into, and there are fans behind it. They're really, they're not magic, but they delay the inevitable. So if you overheat after an hour, those will get you 3 hours or 4 hours. So there are solutions out there, but I think, like you said, Pablo, those are kind of edge cases. I think most people, if you find the right place to mount it in the airplane and you're keeping some air moving, it should not be a problem. That was a bigger deal, I think, 5-6 years ago with some earlier generation iPads. I think the newer iPads generally are more heat tolerant and run a little cooler.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think the other thing too that I was going to go with that too is I think, specifically for whatever reason this guy's question really stood out is, like flight training, there's an initial investment, but it'll withstand. I mean, you don't have to get the latest iPad. You can get one that's not 10 years old, that's running iOS 13 or above. Inside joke, Chris and I. And still, you could get a used one for like $168. Okay, I've looked, $150, $175 a used iPad that'll run iOS 13 and above. A Stratix, if you're looking for value, which is also 175 bucks. You know, maybe a 4-flight subscription or maybe a FlyQ or something free. I think you can be all in for 500 bucks on something that'll get you going. And then, as always, the more you use it, you'll be like, I need to upgrade, and then you're in trouble, right? Then you're going to be stuck doing this.
The thing that Chris said is also not to be overlooked. Your phone. I mean, I'm guessing most people here have a smartphone of some kind. You have your first EFB, and maybe as you advance, yeah, like you said, you want to invest in a tablet. But boy, if you're really getting started and really want to do it on the cheap, use your phone. There are plenty of good apps there, and you're going to have no more money out of pocket for hardware.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, a lot of these EFBs have the dual. You don't buy each one, right? It's like 4-flight. You get phone and iPad.
It comes with it.
Exactly.
You get like 3 devices or something like that. So yeah.
That's right.
Yep.
Cool. Oh gosh, more Wings credit. What iPad to use? That's kind of a basic question. I think it's something that's on the newer side. I think you're not looking at so much the hardware, although they are interconnected. So it's the iOS version, because a lot of the 4-flights and stuff like that don't run on older versions of iOS. So I think you're looking at something that'll run at least iOS 13 or above. And that's still probably going to be good for another year or so, because as they move forward, right, that'll become outdated. But you're probably looking at something like an iPad Air 4 or above right now.
And then the one thing I'll say is the new Mini 6 is a great buy. A lot of people like that smaller size because it's easier to yoke mount, and the Mini 6 has the better quality screen. It's got a little bit lower screen, it's got a good processor, and it's not that expensive. So we could talk all day about it, but if you're looking for a brand new one, I really do think that Mini 6 is worth checking out.
And the other part is, I know that from our pilot information center, is make sure that don't necessarily go with the minimum storage, because the charts take up space. So make sure you're getting one with enough storage. Whatever you're getting, just make sure it's enough that's going to hold all the charts.
All right, so I've been asked to tell, and I've been asked to verify, and I've been asked, okay, all this stuff about the iPad with cellular and without. Okay, yes. Oh, yes. So take it, John, because it sounds to me like you've had this before. I was going to take a go.
That's a good question. So if you're buying a new iPad, one of the questions is, do I get it with cellular, LTE or not? And the reason that matters is the cellular version includes a GPS chip. So if you get an iPad with LTE, you have a built-in GPS, and you can take off and fly, and you'll have moving map with nothing else. So that's usually like $100, $150 premium over the non-LTE version. And if you can swing it, that's a nice upgrade. The GPS works well. If you want to save some money, you do not have to have it, because if you're going to use a Sentry, a Stratus, a Bad Elf GPS, like most pilots do, all of those have a GPS built in. So you don't need the internal iPad GPS. You have one in your external device. So I always say it's nice to have, but it's not a must-have. That LTE is not going to work in the air reliably. So don't buy it because you think you're going to be streaming Netflix at 10,000 feet. That's not the purpose of it. If you think you'll use the LTE on the ground for other stuff, great, go for it. There is obviously, like a cell phone, there's a monthly expense to that, $50, something like that. And so that if that's a value, or if you think the built-in GPS is a value, go for it. But by no means is a must-have. I've not had a GPS-enabled iPad in years, because I'm always flying with either panel or Stratus or Sentry. So I don't need it. I save the money.
Yep.
Agreed. And I was going to say, I think the big thing there was reliability. Yeah, the GPS will work, but I think it is, and I'll say it, a lot less reliable than having the Stratus or Stratix or Bad Elf or whatever the heck it is. Those are reliable, sure.
And not to mention the value add you're getting with the ADS-B stuff, because you're getting weather and traffic. I mean, that is huge in addition to the GPS. And I love the AHRS. For me, that's massive. So.
Yep. Yeah, and it's funny because now I don't even need the Stratix because it Bluetooth's right to the panel that we got, the panel mount. So I don't even need that anymore, right? So there's options out there, and yes, the Wi-Fi one with cellular is the way to go, but it's just not as reliable, and you're just not getting everything to the same degree as you would with a standalone. Plus, your phone's going to drain really quickly, and you're going to have to be plugged in, because that'll drain like half the life on it. So, all right. Nice job today playing English. Good. Okay. Do you know of any kind of Redbird training courses? Do you guys have any, or do you guys deal with any kind of sim course type stuff?
I don't know of any Redbird training courses. I mean, shameless plug, we have a flight sim update email newsletter that's free that we do blogs, videos, webinars, lots of content on flight sim. So if you go to sporties.com/flight sim, you can see that. But that's, to be fair, that's not Redbird specific. I mean, the one thing I'll say is Redbird, they're good people. They have great support. So if you have questions, now maybe this is more tech support than how to, but they really do have great support. You're going to talk to somebody there who's knowledgeable, so keep that in mind.
And they've got their a gift program, and they've got a new one coming out too. They just announced that Redbird Migration. Shoot, I'm forgetting what the name
They've
of it is right
got
now.
the Pilot Pro app, I think it's called.
Yes,
and
Pilot Pro,
it's an
the one.
app that kind of helps you track your proficiency and fly in the sim. It's sort of self-guided proficiency, so you don't have to get with a flight instructor every time. It's a cool app.
Okay, so I guess Lida knows that if you pester me enough, I'll get to your question. So here's one. Are you getting my questions? I am. There's just tons of them. What's the difference between D2 Air Aviator smartwatch and D2 Air X10 smartwatch? Oh, John.
Good one. So D2 Air has been out a couple years. D2 Air X10 has been out a couple weeks. That's the newest one. Same basic watch and everything. The X10 adds the Siri and integration or Google Assistant, so you can compose a text or take a phone call from your watch. It also has a couple upgrades in materials. So the back of the case now is stainless steel instead of plastic, which is a small thing but a nice thing. The old ones kind of wore out some more. And then just some kind of software upgrades. The widgets and glances are, I think, better, easier to use, more options, more customizable. So it's not a dramatic upgrade, but like anything, it's kind of a generation newer, a couple of nicer features, a couple construction upgrades.
Okay, well, I hate to say it, but I lost track of time, and we're literally right on time. Look, Peter, John, James, Alexander, Brad, Paul, Jennifer, love you all. I'm sorry. There's some really good questions in here, and we'll try to answer maybe in another episode. But I've probably got 100 unanswered questions, and I apologize. I apologize up front. Remember. John, thank you to you, Sporties, for all you do. We love it. And I guess this is where we have to say we do have a partnership, right? So we brought John here, but not for that, but because you know your stuff, and you guys do offer all the things that pilots need. So thank you for that.
Yes.
Any final words you'd like to say?
I appreciate you guys having me, and I know it can be overwhelming on the gear front, but I think a lot of the advice we gave today was just, dive in, get your hands dirty, especially on the app stuff. A lot of it's free or free trials, so don't be afraid to do it. We do have a ton of content on our site, not just, I'd be happy if you bought something, but lots of good content videos. So if you have questions on this stuff, sporties.com, and might be able to answer some of those questions we didn't get to.
Cool, thank you. And Chris?
Yes.
Steven, I'm going to ask you to give us about 30 seconds as Chris plays us out.
Hey,
but
here
Chris,
we go.
If you could please put up the slide for the next presentation so that everyone knows when it is and they do not miss it.
There it
is, March 24th. So play us out, Chris. So March 24th, same time, 12 to 1 Eastern. Ask a CFI, well, almost anything. Who knows why? Ask a CFI. Play us out, Chris. I can talk over the music. Ask us CFI. I don't know why. Let's ask anyway. Okay, we'll be there. Enjoy it. Ask us anything. Stump us. Who knows? That'll be the easy part, right? John, thank you. Steven.
All right. Well, if you do what always interests you, at least one person is pleased.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. See everybody next month.
All right, everybody. See you later.